Kibutsuji Muzan is perhaps one of the most recognizable villains in modern shonen. His story is not only marred with tragedy, it is exactly why he becomes the progenitive demonic king we know him to be. He's malicious, manipulative, and the ultimate egotist. So today we'll be going over Muzan's history within Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. And with that, let's first break down his name. A name which, as per usual with those from this series, follows a particular naming scheme. His first name, Muzan, contains kanji for miserable, pitiful, and merciless. Without a doubt, these words perfectly describe the demon lord. His last name, Kibutsuji, has a kanji for demon dance, which I find to be very fitting for a demon so often visually compared to the king of pop and my personal favorite artist of all time, Michael Jackson. Now with all that in mind, onto his story. At birth, Muzan was described as sickly. His heart stopped multiple times within his mother's womb, and once born, it was believed that he was stillborn. He had no pulse, nor did he breathe. That is, until he was about to be cremated. And it was then that he coughed out his first cries. Interestingly enough, during this time, the Heian period, cremation was limited to mostly the wealthy due to the cost of firewood. So one may infer that Muzan came from a rather opulent family. A family which would ultimately be distantly related to the Ubuyashiki clan, the head of the Demon Slayers. That being said, his illness continued well into his adulthood. In fact, Muzan was going to die before 20. Obviously, his dire reality is what motivates him to turn to a physician. This doctor would then treat Muzan with the blue spider lily. However, the treatment wasn't going as well as Muzan wanted, so he killed the physician in a rage, but a change did occur. Muzan gained noticeable strength and vitality. His humanity was the cost of this though. He found himself unable to enter the sunlight, instinctively knowing that he would perish in it. The newly minted demon also craved human flesh, which is something Muzan is not afraid to indulge in. Even early on, it is evident that Muzan has always cared about himself first and is not mortified by the consumption of people in the slightest. Instead, he's frustrated because he's at the mercy of the sun. Because of this, he becomes obsessed with finding the blue spider lily, even going as far as to punish upper rank demons for being unable to find it. He was intent on obtaining his dream of roaming beneath the sun, spending several centuries in pursuit of the flower. This pursuit ultimately led him to creating more demons such as Tamayo and upper rank 1 Kokushibo. Yet he is still unable to conquer the sun. His timeline gets a bit muddy until the Sengoku period, during which he is almost defeated by the legendary slayer Yoriichi Tsujikuni. It is important to note that Yoriichi notices the pure malice within Muzan, comparing him to magma erupting from a volcano. This life or death encounter also reveals that Muzan has 7 hearts and 5 brains. Muzan only survives by splitting himself into 1,800 pieces, allowing the tiniest bits to escape and regenerate. He then goes on to eradicate anyone who knew Yoriichi's sun-breathing technique. This one and only confrontation with Yoriichi would go on to haunt him forever. Now once again, there aren't exactly any concrete time references for when this happens, but Muzan would turn Akaza into a demon and then form the 12 Kizuki. But much later in the Taisho period, he would slaughter the Kamado family, turning Nezuko into a demon. And he isn't seen again until Tanjiro Kamado spots him in Asakusa, Tokyo. Here he is masquerading as a human with a wife and child. If anything, his elaborate ruse is a testament to how far Muzan is willing to go to achieve his immortality. Muzan escapes by creating a demon within the crowd. However, before he leaves, Muzan's memory of Yoriichi is triggered by Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings. This recollection is enough for the demon lord to shiver. Afterwards, he leaves his pseudo family at home so he can meet with Susamuru and Yaiba. However, he is stopped on the way by a drunken group, and with this, a man from the group would tell Muzan that he looks half dead. This enrages Muzan enough to kill the group, all while asking if he looks sick, if he looks near death. And so yeah, despite his near immortality, Muzan seems to still react harshly to illusions that he is not well, as most likely these sorts of things remind him of his sickly state before demonization. He then commands Susamuru and Yaiba to hunt down and kill Tanjiro, which we of course know to have ultimately failed. Sometime after this, Muzan calls a meeting with the lower ranks of the 12 Kizuki. Here it is perhaps the first time we see him using his shape-shifting abilities. Here he is disguised as a woman, and the deception is good enough for lower ranks to not recognize him at first. And it is here that Muzan informs the demons that Rui, lower rank 5, is dead. And interestingly enough, Rui's demon state was at the hands of Muzan himself. The demon lord took pity on the sickly child and turned him into a demon. And regrettably, Rui would kill his parents, as Muzan would then take advantage of this. He would tell Rui that his parents' death was their own fault. They simply did not accept him as he is. But yeah, Muzan would scold the lower moons for dying so easily, unlike the upper moons who haven't changed for over a century. And it is during this meeting that we see that Muzan does not care for his lower demons in the slightest. He kills every lower rank except for Enmu, who he supplies with his own blood, commanding him to kill a Hashira and Tanjiro. Later, Muzan is seen yet again chameleoning into human society. However, this time, he presents himself as a young, sickly boy, the adopted son of a wealthy businessman. And his entrepreneurial father even mentions using his company to create a special medicine to nullify his son's skin condition. And while there, Muzan is met by Akaza, who is upper rank 3 of the 12 Kizuki at this point. Akaza informs Muzan that he hasn't found the blue spider lily, nor can he confirm it still exists. On top of that, Akaza spoke of killing a Hashira as if it were an accomplishment as opposed to an expectation. Being unable to accept any failure and combined with his obsession with immortality, Muzan flies into a rage. A rage in which the mere utterance of Akaza's name was enough to tear at the demon's very being. A hold Muzan possesses over all demons with the exception of a very small few. Strangely, he quickly regains his composure. And it's moments like these that really show the deep rage Muzan possesses. Not only that, but one could argue that his pursuit of immortality itself is a fear of death. A core reasoning that ultimately all but a few members of his progeny are bound to. But with this, Muzan would send Akaza away. Unfortunately, Muzan is not seen again until he appears in the entertainment district. And here he meets with the weaker half of Upper Moon 6, Daki. Her reaction to seeing him is rather different from other demons. She doesn't cower in fear or seize up. Instead, Daki looks overjoyed to see the demon progenitor. She falls before him as he encourages her, congratulating the upper rank 6 on eating several Hashira. Once again, he manipulates another demon, commenting on her appearance and telling her to grow stronger and crueler. To Daki, her appearance is important, and Muzan knows this. Like Rui, Muzan only uses Daki. Not only this, but he asks her to dispose of Nezuko, going on to say that she is his only hope. His words to her prove that Muzan is not above using any means to get results. He is a creature that preys upon vulnerability. Though once again, Muzan's memory of Yorichi does come to haunt him. Even his cells within Daki associate Tanjiro with Yorichi. After Daki and Gyutaro's defeat, Muzan summons the upper ranks to the Infinity Castle, something he has not done in 113 years. He seems to be experimenting as he tells the demons that he will not accept failure like Daki or Gyutaro. Muzan then goes on to further say that if Gyutaro had fought by his lonesome, he would not have died. He also regrets putting so much faith in Daki, which is interesting considering the flashback that shows him praising her, wanting her to do his bidding. It seems that even if he believes someone will ultimately fail, he still tries to use them to meet an end. Muzan states that he doesn't know why the 12 Kizuki exist anymore. They haven't found the blue spider lily, nor have they eliminated the Ubuyashiki family. Upper rank 5, Gyoko, tries to offer information to Muzan, but the demon lord swiftly beheads him, commenting that he hates change, whether that be changes in the flesh or emotion. Muzan goes to say that change breeds weakness and inferiority. Once more, Muzan's words are an insight into his character. He has been immortal and unchanging for centuries, so of course he views change so negatively. That being said, Muzan does express that the deaths of Daki and Gyutaro displeases him, and the upper ranks should struggle with more desperation. He then tells Gyoko to go to the swordsmith village with upper rank 4, Hantengu. Now, despite these upper moons failing as well, at the swordsmith village, Nezuko is able to overcome the sun. While in his young body disguise, Muzan senses this change and reacts gleefully, cackling and obliterating not only his adopted mother's head, but the maid's as well. Muzan says that there is not a need to search for the blue spider lily anymore because he can simply devour Nezuko and conquer the sun. The demon lord then goes on to say that all battles will now revolve around Nezuko. And this isn't the first time Muzan has talked about or consumed another demon though. During his meeting with the lower ranks, he did eat one of them. Behavior that, although unique to an extent, is not exclusive considering Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo, the demon with the highest concentration of Muzan's own blood, absorbed the demons that challenged him and were defeated. With the knowledge that Nezuko has conquered the sun, Muzan then has upper rank 4 Nakime spy on the demon slayers. She tells Muzan that she has mapped out 60% of their whereabouts but has not found Nezuko. To this, Muzan says her power has grown and that he will soon find Nezuko and Ubuyashiki, though Muzan does not need to wait very long. In time, Muzan would arrive at the Ubuyashiki estate, meeting a near-death Kaguya Ubuyashiki, the current leader of the Demon Slayers. Muzan immediately mocks Kaguya, calling him ugly and saying he smells like a corpse. And it is here that Kaguya confirms something that we touched upon earlier, that both he and Muzan are distantly related. He also points out that because of their sin of birthing the original demon, their bloodline was plagued by early death. Muzan then further insults Kaguya, stating in his 1,000 years of life, he has not been stopped. Quote, "Heaven has never punished me. It has forgiven my killing of thousands." And this line is something that really stuck with me when I read this arc. Due to his egotistical nature, Muzan is absorbed within himself enough that he believes nothing bad will come to him, even saying that he has never seen gods nor Buddhas. To this, Kaguya asks Muzan what his dream is, and Muzan doesn't answer first. Instead, his inner dialogue reveals that despite having the very figure behind the ever-loathsome Demon Slayer core before him, he feels no hatred. On the contrary, he feels relieved, if not disgusted. And I think that's an account of him taking in his own reflection to an extent. He also notes that there are only 4 humans at the estate and no guards. Kaguya tells the Demon Lord his dream, eternity. And in response to this, confidently, Muzan replies that he will soon achieve this for himself once he finds Nezuko. However, Kaguya rebuffs this, saying that eternity is a human feeling because only emotions last forever and are undying. Clearly, Muzan himself could not understand the hold emotions have, as he has only cared about his own self-preservation. Kaguya then goes on further, telling Muzan that no one has forgiven him, that he has hurt too many people to simply escape. Muzan continues to grow agitated by Kaguya, clearly perturbed by a human, someone he views as a lesser, telling him he must pay for his sins. But just as Muzan prepared to kill Kaguya, the mansion would explode. The Demon Lord cursed Kaguya as he tried to regenerate, however, spikes were also added to the explosives, slowing down Muzan's regeneration further. He is able to sense Demon Slayers and Hashira converging on him, and flesh seeds appear around him. The Blood Demon art immobilizes him, but does no harm to him. Muzan believes he can absorb the thorns to escape, however Tamayo appears suddenly. Here she stabs her hand into Muzan's stomach, and Muzan is of course enraged to see her, as she is, after all, the only other demon who freed herself of his control. Tamayo informs Muzan that he absorbed her hand and that within her fist was a drug used to turn demons back into humans. The Demon Lord is enraged by this, stating it to be impossible. He mocks Tamayo, saying that it was her who ate her own family, not him. Tearfully, she replies that if she knew that would happen, she wouldn't have done it. She only wants to outlive her disease and see her children. This is clearly a theme for Muzan, as Rui was also sickly. He preys on the sick not only because they are more likely to depend on him, but clearly because they remind the demon of himself. That being said, Muzan continues to berate her, commenting that she ate many others after her family and that she enjoyed it. Once someone no longer serves a purpose to Muzan, it is rather clear how viciously he throws them away. Not only this, but he is practically a master in tearing someone down. Tamayo herself was already crying, and yet Muzan continued to mock her. However, Tamayo tells him that she will atone for what she has done by her death and Muzan's. With that, she calls out to the stone Hashira, Gyome Himejima, who beheads the demon progenitor. That being said, Muzan is able to regenerate his own head, which does not surprise Gyome. In fact, the stone Hashira recalls Kaguya, saying only sunlight truly harms Muzan. This is bizarre considering the lethality of head severance for demons up until this point, though in his case this ability can probably be explained by the fact that Muzan has 5 brains. And unfortunately, this means that the Slayers must keep Muzan preoccupied until dawn. But now, due to the emergency summons, nearby swordsmen including Tanjiro and the Hashira would arrive. From which point each Slayer would use their respective styles to try and cut down Muzan, as giant sliding doors would open up beneath them. And as they drop down into the Infinity Castle, Muzan would insult the Slayers, saying that they will all die tonight. While the many Slayers fought the upper ranks, Muzan himself was encased within a flesh cocoon alongside Tamayo as he continued to absorb her. One can only imagine Muzan is trying to purge himself of Tamayo's medicine. However, a troop of swordsmen would approach it. Here they would argue amongst themselves, wondering if they should attack Muzan or wait for the Hashira, as suddenly a transformed Muzan would emerge from the cocoon and slaughter them all. And with this, Muzan's appearance had once more changed. His hair was now white, and there are a copious number of mouths around his body. He kills them all so fast that Kirya Ubuyashiki cannot even tell the Slayers to not approach. Muzan then thanks them for the meal, noting that he was starving before. Before the Demon Lord is a dying Tamayo who he mocks one last time, informing her the medicine clearly does not work. Tamayo sobs, demanding Muzan give her family back. Muzan tells her to die and join them, and then he crushes her head. He appears to have recovered his strength and makes quick work of the second troop, heading to his location. Afterwards, the Demon Lord again says he will kill all the Demon Slayers. Through Nakime's Blood Demon art, Muzan is transported before the Water Hashira, Gyu Tomioka, and Tanjiro. Here Muzan speaks to them coldly, saying that Slayers always spoke of avenging their loved ones or whatever, but isn't it enough that they are alive? Conveying that Slayers should just count their blessings and go back to their lives. As then, the Demon Royal compares himself to a natural disaster, saying that no one blames nor seeks revenge against tornadoes or rainstorms. And this sort of statement only proves that Muzan believes himself to be inevitable. In his mind, there is no escaping his agenda. He continues to tell the Slayers to give up and that the dead won't return. Not only this, but Muzan knows that Demon Slayers themselves are abnormal. Most people give up their grudge and continue to live their life, but the swordsmen go out of their way to seek justice. Here, the Demon Lord also reveals that he is sick of it, he just wants it all to end. At the end of his hate-filled antagonistic speech, Tanjiro replies that Muzan should not be allowed to exist anymore. The two swordsmen would begin to attack Muzan, during which he would reveal the pseudo-deaths of Mitsuri Kanroji, the Love Hashira, and Obanai Iguro, the Serpent Hashira. During this battle, Muzan manages to crush Tanjiro's eye, but before he can impale the Slayer, Mitsuri breaks through a wall. With her is Obanai, who tells Tanjiro to retreat. Muzan here is irate that the two Hashira are not dead, scolding Nakame. Unbeknownst to him, Mitsuri and Obanai's deaths were an illusion created by the demon Yushiro as he controlled Nakime's vision. Without warning, the castle would begin to shake. The three would continue to fight Muzan as their positions repeatedly changed due to Yushiro's involvement. Muzan would try to wrestle control back from Yushiro, but his focus would be pulled back to the battle. Yushiro takes advantage of this and once more changes the landscape, at which point the Slayers and Muzan began to fall. While falling, Muzan crushes Nakime's skull. Yushiro uses her dying cells to change their location one last time, attempting to transport the group outside. However, they are still within the castle. The fight continues, but the castle begins to creak. Obanai at this point notes that if the castle is destroyed, only Muzan would survive. Thankfully, the combatants are pushed upwards, flinging them all to the surface. From here, Muzan rises from the rubble, angrier than ever. He once again mocks the Demon Slayers, telling them to try and keep him occupied until sunrise. From there, the Hashira would attack. Obanai's blade does slice through Muzan's neck, however, the Demon Lord is powerful enough now that he instantaneously regenerates the damage done to him. In retaliation, Muzan's elongated tendrils whip and wipe at the Hashira, but lower ranked members all sacrifice themselves, taking the damage meant for the Hashira. The lower ranked members would charge at Muzan, desperate to buy time. Muzan though is too powerful now and quickly cuts them all down. After this, Tanjiro falls to the ground and coughs up blood. Muzan would notice this and explain that he mixed his own blood into his attacks. The concentration of his blood here is too much for demonization, and so instead it acts as a poison to the Demon Slayers. As Tanjiro lays there, Muzan states that the boy is dead. However, with Tanjiro gone, the Hashira would continue to fight Muzan. He would unleash another flurry of whip attacks which would strike them. Muzan commends them for still being able to move, commenting that those with the Demon Slayer marks are not easily put down. The strongest living Hashira, Gyome Himejima, would then come to their aid, and Muzan would recognize him as the Slayer who cut down Kokoshibo. Right after, the Demon Lord is bisected by the Wind Hashira, Senemi Shinazugawa. Senemi also tosses a couple bottles filled with oil at Muzan and lights a match, throwing it at him. Muzan is set ablaze, cursing Senemi for using such a dirty trick, and the Wind Hashira would reply that it was only fitting for a demon. During their battle, Gyomei notices that Muzan's attacks have increased in speed, fast enough that even the Hashira struggle to keep up. Clearly, Muzan's new form boosts his physical abilities, not to mention the demon had recently fed. His attacks take Mitsuri out of the fight as he slices not only her right cheek, but her shoulder on the same side. Past that, Obanai and Sanemi would fight Muzan in close combat. Obanai manages to cut off the demon's arm and kicks it away to stop regeneration. Muzan acknowledges this but is not concerned. The poison does seem to affect even Hashira, as Gyu himself loses enough focus to drop his sword momentarily. But regardless, he would steady himself and continue to attack, something that Muzan would commend the Hashira for. Muzan expects to rely on his poison, saying that their fighting is useless, that they'll all be dead before dawn breaks. So yeah, even while battling multiple Hashira, Muzan maintains his narcissistic nature. His lack of fear or uncertainty once again shows how self-absorbed the Demon King is. Thankfully, Tamayo's cat arrives on the scene and disperses antidotes into the Hashira. Muzan quickly slices the cat to pieces as he realizes what has happened. In his rage, he unleashes an attack that causes craters to form around him. The Hashira are barely able to dodge. Eventually though, they are joined by Inosuke Hashibira, Hanao Suyuri, and Zenitsu Agatsuma, who managed to land several sneak attacks on Muzan, this being on account of Yushiro's illusory-based blood demon art. Ultimately, Muzan is able to detect them though, due to the sound of parting air. Besides Obanai, other Hashira are able to turn their swords red, which slows down Muzan's regeneration further. A crow then calls out from above them, signaling that only an hour and 3 minutes remain until dawn. The swordsmen continue to battle Muzan and notice his bizarre physiology. In fact, Gyomei is the one to look into the transparent world and see Muzan's ever-changing 7 hearts and 5 brains. Then Muzan knocks the Slayers away. The damage is enough to cause more craters and rubble around them, not to mention Gyu and Gyomei lose limbs. Kanao is the only one left standing. She falls to her knees and is unable to will herself to fight. Muzan raises his arm to attack her, but is stopped by a now recovered Tanjiro. Muzan regards these swordsmen as disgusting, asking who the demon is between them. He also notices the similarities between Tanjiro and Yoriichi once more, telling Tanjiro that he makes his skin crawl. Muzan himself has always been seemingly disgusted by sickly humans, commenting on not only Kaguya's near-death appearance, but Tanjiro's massive tumor as well. However, it is interesting to note how much more repulsed he is by anyone who resembles Yoriichi. Tanjiro tries to combine all forms of sun breathing in order to kill Muzan, but is continually stopped by the demon. All the while, Muzan is reminded of Yoriichi. Tanjiro tires while battling Muzan. His attacks become weaker and slower, however Muzan finds himself struggling against the human. He realizes this must be an after effect of the antidote. Despite absorbing Tamayo, some of her consciousness is still within Muzan. He asks her about his condition. Tamayo confirms that her medicine was to make him human, but refuses to divulge what else it does. Further enraged, he uses her memories to deduce that there are 2 poisons within him. One is to turn him human, the second is to age him by 50 years every minute. This explains why the demon was struggling against a wounded Tanjiro, as his body was trying to subvert energy to combat his rapid aging. Muzan is able to calculate that he has aged roughly 9,000 years since the battle began, thus the reason for his now white hair. With that, a crow announces that only an hour remains until dawn. Obanai once more joins the fight, assisting Tanjiro as the 2 battle Muzan together. During this 2-on-1 fight, Muzan notices another side effect. Scars from Yoriichi appear on his body, implying that the Slayer hurt Muzan even at the cellular level. And so despite having died oh so long ago, Yoriichi was in a sense aiding in the defeat of the Demon King as well. A crow would appear again, signaling only 40 minutes remaining until sunrise. Hearing this, Muzan would immediately do the dash, determined to hide himself from the sun. At the end of the day, he has no pride as a combatant, it is all about survival. Tanjiro gives chase and throws the swords of deceased core members at Muzan. The Demon Lord deflects them, noting that piercing attacks would be far worse for him than slashing ones. The Serpent Ashura helps Tanjiro by stabbing Muzan in the chest, which stops his escape. Their battle rages on, with Muzan sensing other Hashira are returning. He curses the Demon Slayers and compares them to linked beads on a rosary. Only 35 minutes remain until dawn. Muzan then attempts to split himself like he did during his fight with Yoriichi. However, the Demon Lord is unable to do so, noting this is another side effect. Tamayo's consciousness speaks to Muzan once more, telling him that the 4th ingredient within the medicine was to destroy his cells. The first 3 were to simply weaken him. Tamayo also tells Muzan that just as he would do anything to survive, those who have suffered because of him will do anything to kill him. He knows that the 4 drugs within him are causing regeneration to be exhausting. Therefore, the Demon Slayer's attacks are far more potent. He also realizes that it will take more time to counteract the poison. Muzan stops in his tracks but then unleashes a giant shockwave. His body transforms further with a huge mouth on his torso. Zenitsu and Inosuke join back into the fight as well as Yu and Gyomei. Their struggle continues with other Hashira assisting, such as Mitsuri, who sacrifices her own arms to rip off Muzan's left one. After this, he lost his right to Sanemi. Unmoved by this, Muzan changes his shape once more. This time his mouth elongates, going from his head to his torso. He tries to eat Tanjiro, but is blocked by Obanai. Finally, the sun rises. Muzan panics at the sight of it. He tries to hide from the sun under a wall of flesh and transforms into a giant baby. With his gigantic body, he swallows up Tanjiro. The Demon Lord attempts to crawl away but is slowed down by the efforts of the Demon Slayers and Kakushi. However, Muzan realizes he can escape the sun if he goes underground. Other Slayers try to stop him but are simply too exhausted. Thankfully, Tanjiro stops Muzan from within. Muzan rears up in pain and at long last begins to disintegrate under the sun. While his life is ending, Muzan thinks back to what Kaguya told him about emotions. He honestly acknowledges that he does not remember a single human he has killed, but their feelings had passed on and stayed alive, effectively defeating him. He is moved to tears by this, stating that his feelings are undying too, and gives all his blood to Tanjiro. He then tells the Slayer to make his dream come true before finally disintegrating. Tanjiro, now feral and a demon, begins to rampage. He wrestles with the Phantom of Muzan as the demon tries to convince him to continue his carnage. However, Kanao injects Tanjiro a medicine that turns him back to a human, at long last defeating Muzan. Although he may have attempted to entrust his empire to Demon King Tanjiro, really and truly to the bitter end, Muzan was someone only out for himself, not caring about the damage done to others. He also feared change and his own mortality to such a degree that he was willing to do anything to avoid it. Though in the end, he does fall to his own hubris. Thus concluding the story of Kibutsuji Muzan. We really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because when it comes to bringing some of the best Demon Slayer content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. And now when it comes to bringing some of the best Western comic content on the platform, Plot Armor Comics has you covered, so go ahead and check us out over there as well. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.